Feeding for behaviour. The first thing here is don't feed too much. Normally when people have a problem with behaviour in a horse is that they're feeding it for a much higher level of work than they're actually doing, or they're only riding it sort of 3 or 4 times a week, but they're feeding it like they're riding it every day. And as soon as we cut back the feed intake on those horses, the behaviour just moderates, and they'll come back to being so much more sensible. A horse is an interesting animal in that they'll express the amount of energy in their diet in their behaviour. So humans aren't like that, unfortunately. It'd probably be good if we were, because then if people were overeating, they'd get hyperactive and need to go for a run, and they probably wouldn't get so overweight. But humans don't, but horses certainly do. If you feed them a lot of energy or a lot of calories in their diet, their behaviour will change. So education obviously has a big role to play in how they'll express that behaviour. So beautifully educated horses can handle a lot of calories in their diet because they put all of that energy towards doing something really constructive and doing what their rider is asking them to do. If they're not so educated, or their head is just not in the right place, then often it'll turn into just what we would call poor or dangerous behaviour. So it's really important to match your horse's calorie intake with his calorie requirements. Don't feed anything that will cause excess fermentation of starch or sugars in the hindgut. So if you're feeding grains, only feed grains that are well cooked and digested in the small intestine, because there's quite a few studies that actually show that there is changes in behaviour when a horse starts fermenting starch in the hindgut. So if you can keep starch out of the hindgut, your behaviour of your horse is likely going to stay a lot more level. Don't be afraid to change the amount you feed on a daily basis according to how much work they do. So a lot of people get caught in the trap of going, all right, well, this is my horse's feed, and they feed that every single day. So they might, for whatever reason, I mean, you all have situations where you go, oh, I can't get on my horse today to ride it. If you feed it the same amount that you would normally feed it on a day that you do ride it, then you've exceeded its calorie requirement for that day. And depending on its temperament and its level of education, the next day when you hop on it, or if it has 2 or 3 days off especially, when you hop on it, its behaviour may well be quite different to what you were expecting it to be, because it's been exceeding its calorie requirement for those few days. So don't be afraid to adjust what you're feeding according to the amount of work that it's doing on a daily basis, especially if it's a horse that does get a bit hot, and a horse that you do have trouble with its temperament. The type of feed you use may make a difference in some horses. So often horses that are quite hyperactive, if we can, we'll change them onto just a fibre-based feed that doesn't actually have any grain in it. So Prize have got a feed called Easy Sport that we laugh because we say whenever we get a problem horse, we just put it on Easy Sport and generally it fixes the problem. But it doesn't have any grain in it. It's very low in starch and low in sugar. And it's interesting, occasionally we'll get thoroughbred trainers to put horses on Easy Sport for a whole bunch of reasons. So they might tie up, or they might have really bad ulcers, or they might be having troubles with them in the barriers, and just to get them through a couple of barrier trials, we'll put them on Easy Sport just to bring their behaviour back down. But a lot of them will comment about how much calmer the horses are when they're on Easy Sport. Like, geez, they're quiet on this feed. And they don't like, the thoroughbred trainers don't like it. They don't like their horses being really quiet because they think they won't run very fast. But it does make a difference. Not to all horses, but to some horses it will make a difference if you take them off those grain-based feeds and put them on the fibre-based feeds. As I say, if your horse seems reactive to grain-based feeds, try a fibre and oil-based feed, so like Easy Sport. And I couldn't resist, I had to put down the bottom in capital and bold, don't feed too much, because it's the biggest thing that's going to cause behavioural changes. And it doesn't do it to all horses. I have one horse that I could feed as much of anything I wanted to. She'd be the size of a house if I did, but her behaviour wouldn't change because she's just not that kind of horse. And then another one I have, if I've fed it too much, there was no way that I would hop on it after it had been fed too much, because its behaviour would be just not something that I would want to be on the back of. So it is really important not to feed too much to horses that you know are reactive.